President, members of the European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak in the European Parliament in one of the key institutions of the European Union. I have been here several times, but never before had I an opportunity to speak at a plenary session. Therefore, I do appreciate your invitation. The elected representatives of 27 countries, with a broad spectrum of political opinions and views, make a unique auditorium, as unique and in essence as revolutionary as the experiment of the European Union itself. For more than half a century, the EU has attempted to make decision-making in Europe better by moving a significant part of decisions from individual states to European institutions. I have come here from the capital of the Czech Republic, Prague, from the historical centre of the Czech statehood, from one of the important places where European thinking, European culture and European civilization have emerged. I come as a representative of the Czech state, which has always, in its various forms, been part of the European history. I'm coming from a state which has many times taken a direct and important part in shaping our history and which wants to continue doing so. 9 years ago have passed since the President of the Czech Republic last spoke to you. It was my predecessor, Václav Havel, and it was and it was 4 years before our accession to the European Union. Several weeks ago, the Czech Prime Minister, Mirek Topolánek, also held a speech here as a leader of a country presiding over the European Council. His speech focused on the priorities of the Czech presidency, but also on topical problems EU countries are facing today. This allows me to focus on issues that are a bit more general. I would like to talk about issues that at first sight may seem perhaps less dramatic than solving the current economic crisis or the Ukrainian-Russian gas conflict or the situation in Gaza. However, I believe that these issues are of extraordinary importance for the further development of the European integration project. In less than 3 months, the Czech Republic will commemorate the 5th anniversary of its EU accession. We will mark the date with dignity. We will commemorate the date as a country which, unlike some other new member states, does not feel disappointed over unfulfilled expectations connected with our membership. This is no surprise, and there is a rational explanation. Our expectations were realistic. We knew very well we were entering a community formed and shaped by human beings. We knew it was not a utopian construction put together without authentic human interests, visions, views and ideas. These interests, as well as ideas, can be found all over the EU, and it cannot be otherwise. We viewed our EU accession, on one hand, as a confirmation of the fact that quite rapidly, over less than 15 years since the fall of communism, we managed to become a standard European country again. On the other hand, we considered the accession an opportunity to actively take part in the European integration process and benefit from the highly integrated European project, and at the same time to influence this process according to our views. We assume our share of responsibility for the development of the European Union, and it is with this feeling of responsibility that we approach our presidency in the European Council. I believe that the first 6 weeks of the Czech presidency have convincingly demonstrated our responsible attitude. At this forum, I'd like to repeat my conviction once again clearly and loudly for those of you who don't know or do not want to know. My conviction is that for us there was and there is no alternative to the European Union membership, and that in my country there is no relevant political force that could or would want to undermine this position. We have been therefore really touched by the repeated and growing attacks against our country. Attacks based on the unfounded assumption that Czechs are searching for another integration project than the one they became members of 5 years ago. That is not true. The citizens of the Czech Republic feel that European integration has an important and needed mission and task to fulfill. It can be summarized as follows. Firstly, removing unnecessary and, for human freedom and prosperity, counterproductive barriers to the free movement of people, goods, services, ideas, political philosophies, worldviews, cultural patterns and behaviour models that have been formed among individual European states for various reasons over the centuries. And secondly, joint care for public goods on European level. I'm referring to projects that cannot be carried out effectively through bilateral negotiations of 2 or more neighbouring European countries. The efforts to implement the 2 objectives, that is removing barriers and rationally selecting issues that should be solved at European level, are not and will never be completed. Various barriers and obstacles still remain, and decision-making at Brussels level is certainly more extensive than necessary. Certainly it is more extensive than people in individual member states ask for. You, members of the European Parliament, are certainly well aware of this. The question I want to ask you is therefore a purely theoretical one. Are you really convinced that every time you take a vote, you are deciding something that must be decided here in this chamber and not closer to European citizens, that is, within individual European states? In the politically correct rhetoric, we often hear people talking about other possible effects of European integration, which are, however, of lesser and secondary importance. These are driven by the ambitions of professional politicians and people connected to them, not by the interests of ordinary citizens of member states.